Good evening. This is Dr. Troy Fullerton from Bilingual Barrier Busters, and tonight I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the origins of Spanish. Spanish is what we call a Romance language. That is because it evolved out of Latin. Now, there are other languages that evolved out of Latin too. When we use the expression vulgar Latin, we do not mean to imply that the Roman soldiers used a lot of crude expressions, profanity, vulgarity. It doesn't mean the same thing as it does today in everyday speech. The word vulgar simply meant uneducated Latin, the language of the uneducated masses of the people. And when the Roman Empire took the Latin language all over the place, well, they often wound up someplace, well, they always wound up someplace where there were other people who spoke some other language who had to receive their imperfect Latin in an imperfect way. And you know what happens when people learn a language as a second language, they tweak it. And then as their children learn that and it goes on, remember that back then they didn't have the internet. They didn't have a printing press. They didn't have books and magazines like we do nowadays. So the wealthy might go to school and learn to read, but most of the world back then was illiterate, and they didn't have telephones or radios, so there was very little to keep their language standard. So studies have been made to show how this vulgar Latin evolved into languages such as Spanish, Portuguese, French, Italian, Romanian, Catalan, and several others. There are a lot of dialects in Italy that are actually Romance languages, and some of those Romance should I say dialects? Should I say languages? I guess it depends on whether they have an army or not. But a lot of those languages, I'll call them, are very close to Spanish, more so than standard Italian. So where does that leave us? If we're learning Spanish as a second language, does that mean we're going to be able to understand and use these other Romance languages? Well, not exactly, not automatically, but it does mean that it's going to put you way ahead because there is a tremendous amount of lexical similarities between Spanish and other Romance languages. Now, if you learn Spanish and you know what the subject is you're talking about, my experience has been that I can speak to somebody who speaks Italian, and as long as it's a basic conversation about something and we know what we're talking about, I've been able to talk to somebody who spoke Italian, and we could get by. We could understand each other enough to communicate, even though I don't know more than maybe 10. I don't even know that I know 10 words in Italian, but it works. Now, French can't do that so quickly. As far as Portuguese goes, because of the difference in the sound system, they'll probably be able to understand you, but you might not be able to understand them if you learn Spanish.